Welcome to Two Fuse Wrestling Fantasy Booking Edition. In this one, we're going to play a game of who retires Triple H. So, obviously, there's lots of guys that jump to the list right away. Rollins, Randy Orton, both would make sense for fantasy booking.
Well, just to clarify, because Triple H had an unfortunate medical condition, so he had to retire.
Oh, I forgot he is actually retired right
so
now.
that's why we're doing it, because he didn't get the retirement most wrestlers get.
a proper send off.
Yeah.
I totally forget that.
Yeah, he came out on night 2 of last year's WrestleMania and laid his boots in the ring, which I teared up a little bit. Not gonna lie, big Triple H fan, but
I forget that the dude had that serious health issue because now he's running the company and it's amazing. But yeah,
can't wrestle anymore.
Can't wrestle
so
again.
That's kind of what we're paying our respects to Triple H.
So, speaking on that, there's tons of ideas on who Triple H would have a last match with. I'm sure some people might think Shawn Michaels come back and do a pay-per-view at Saudi. They could have did it. Randy Orton made sense. You could have had a legend killer, Ric Flair type thing. But let's get into how you have Triple H's last match, Greg.
Well, for me, I went with a younger guy, and the guys I was thinking were like KO, AJ Styles would have been cool. He just had that face-off with Gunther that was really cool, and a lot of people on Twitter talking about how they never thought they would see Triple H back down from a younger wrestler before. So that was dope. And then McIntyre and Bray were kind of my last two choices, I thought. But ultimately, I went with KO, and the whole thing I would have set up for KO would have been, KO, former Universal Champion, but the way he won was Triple H interfered and took out Seth Rollins for him and basically gave him the Universal title. So I would have set it up months in advance, and during another feud KO was having, have the guy he was in that feud with mention the only reason you were Universal Champion was because of Triple H. And then from there, I would have had KO become delusional about it. During backstage interviews, I have him randomly mention how he doesn't need Triple H or anyone else's help. And then next year, 2024, I would have had him go in saying, oh, he's going to win the Royal Rumble, he's going to go to Mania, he's going to become the champion all on his own, Triple H won't be there, all this stuff. And then during the Rumble, I would have had him make it to the final 2 and then get eliminated. But on the same night as the Rumble, I would have had them announce the first inductee to the Hall of Fame that year, and I would have had it been Triple H. And then they would have said, we're going to hear from Triple H tomorrow about his Hall of Fame thing on Monday Night Raw. And before he can even say anything, I would have KO come out and savagely beat up Triple H. Maybe bloody him up if you want, whatever you want to do, but beat him up really bad. And then, Triple H kind of pays respects to Owen Hart with his name and his son. He named his son Owen. But I would have had him do a throwback to Brian Pillman. So Brian Pillman had a feud with Kevin Sullivan in WCW, who was the booker. And they had a match where it was going to be a strap match, and you had to make the other guy say, I respect you. And Pillman ran in, and he grabbed the mic, and he said, I respect you, Booker man. And then he walked out. And that was kind of the loose cannon gimmick. After he beats down Triple H, I would have had him say something like, oh, congrats on the Hall of Fame, Booker man, or something like that, kind of just as a shout-out to Brian Pillman. And then maybe that transitions KO into this loose cannon type gimmick where he's kind of going crazy. And then I would have had their face-off and Triple H's final match. I would have done that in Mania in Philadelphia. And because it's in Philly and you got to get a little crazy in Philly, I would have done No Holds Barred. And after a brutal, hard-fought battle where they just beat the shit out of each other, I would have had KO break a sledgehammer on Triple H's back and then pin him and then send him out, as a warrior, as a fighter, as what he was instead of the way he ended up having to retire.
First, I loved you mentioned Pillman and the loose cannon. KO could pull that gimmick off, but Pillman's a guy that I know that he gets some credit. Mostly it's he passed away young, and
Yeah.
but he was really fucking good. Like,
Yeah.
it was like this guy could have been in the same conversation as HBK and Bret Hart and them. Like,
Oh yeah, he had the in-ring work, and then the creativity. I think was like, I think it transcended a lot what was going on in the '90s. I think he was ahead of his time. He was almost like the Andy Kaufman for wrestling. Well, Andy Kaufman wrestled, so whatever you want to call that. But
and he was really smart with them contracts.
yeah,
So like he was a very
that's that NFL background. I think.
he's good, and I hope that his son is good. So I hope someone finally
Yeah.
starts pushing his son.
Yeah,
It's
hopefully.
annoying.
Hopefully.
I like the idea of KO because KO's the man, and he has that built-in storyline with Triple H.
Yeah.
Of the
It's
title.
a callback. It kind of like ties up a loose end.
And I like the idea of pushing someone younger with that rub. That's why whenever I thought about having Rollins do it, my idea wasn't to give Rollins the rub. Ultimately, I would have like did the whole angle different, and I would have had Rollins and Triple H been cool
Yeah.
for years until Theory comes up, and then I would have had Triple H turn on Rollins, and he
Go
chooses
to
Theory, and then Rollins gets all in his feelings, and
Yeah.
he's like, "I'm gonna end your career for this," and then Theory's a made guy now because he has Triple H's backing.
Yeah.
But the way I went with it is my choice was Batista, and now that I know that Triple H can't wrestle anymore, I would end it at WrestleMania 35.
Yeah.
I totally spaced on that when we wrote this. I was like, he just looks he looks like he's in good shape. So but
Yeah, he looked a little rough, I think, there when that first happened, that heart problem. But yeah, I think he's recovered.
yeah. So I do it at WrestleMania 35 with Batista. I love that match. I love the brutality in that match.
Pulling
And-
that nose ring out, that
Was awesome.
that was
Yeah.
that was pretty cool.
And what I really like about that match is that Batista said he wanted to come back and put over Triple H,
Yeah,
which is awesome to me. In this day and age where everyone always wants to go over, Batista was like, oh, I want to pay my respects to this guy who got me
Yeah.
over in life. But the way I would have did it is I would have had it in a Hell in a Cell as a last man standing match.
hell yeah.
My idea would be Batista's like, hey, if I win, you retired, and then Triple H is like, all right, well, if I win, you're retired. And since I saw that physicality in that WrestleMania 35 match, I'm like, that's what I think is needed in a last man standing match, in a retirement match. Is like, Ric Flair to me, I know that was like a cool retirement match he had with HBK, but
Well, the Flair, like what makes it different was the Flair thing was that was a wrestling match because Flair was like the quintessential wrestler of the 70s and 80s, and he wanted one more wrestling match. Triple H has done some like brutal stuff, so if that would have, for me, like you're doing Hell in a Cell and I went no holds barred. It's almost like a warrior's last battle, like it's anything goes,
oh, yeah, that's
all out.
That's how I thought of it. It's like these guys aren't gonna like wrestling is their life, and you're not gonna take it from them easy. They're gonna
Yeah.
fight. But the thing I would have did different with this Triple H last match with Batista, since it's Batista's last match, we know, I would have had them both not make it to the 10 count.
Yeah,
And then you had this first ever match where it's like these two dudes are gonna go at each other so hard because they don't want their career to be ended. That's Hell in the Cell and Last Man Standing. I wasn't in my mind. I don't know how you get them so they both don't reach the 10 count, but someone will figure that out there. And I just think it'd be cool where Batista is like, hey, I want to go out putting you over, and Triple H is like, I want to go out putting you over.
yeah.
And I was just like, dude,
They go out together.
yeah, and like that brutality of the match could be like they beat each other up to the point where neither one can make this 10 count, but neither
Yeah.
one was letting the other one make it without.
Maybe just like to end it off top of my head, maybe there's two sledgehammers and they hit each other at the same time, like running at each other.
That would
and
be-
they don't get up.
That would be cool. And I also thought it'd be like, didn't you leave the door open that they could say, oh, I didn't technically
Yeah,
lose.
technically I
if-
didn't lose. Yeah.
If there's a money match that appears down the line. And also, it just gives it that really cool sports feel to me, too, where it's like, hey, I'm respecting you, you respecting me, and we just couldn't beat each other today.
Yeah.
Like,
What I like about it, so probably the two best Hell Hell in a Cell performers are The Undertaker and Triple H. Like, they've been in more, they won more, all this stuff. But Batista's only been in 2 Hell in a Cell matches, one with Triple H and one with The Undertaker, and he beat them both. So it's like, is Batista the greatest Hell in a Cell competitor? So then if you like bring that back, you give him one more, and then to add it, you make it last man standing.
And,
that would have been epic.
And it just shows how, I just think the brutality in a last man standing taking place inside a Hell in a Cell would be, and obviously, like I said, I rewatched WrestleMania 35 recently, and I'm just like, dude, these guys, they're obviously not afraid to hit each other. And Kevin Nash just said recently that him and Scott Hall weren't afraid to hit each other, and they broke their nose on a home stretch.
If you look at like matches like, say, Benoit and Jericho, or KO and Sami Zayn, or Triple H and Batista, Triple H and Shawn Michaels, like, if guys are friends, they lay it in a little harder, and I think it makes it better, like, when guys do that.
Yeah. So the idea of, hey, if Triple H is going to go out on a last match, make it this, like, Ric Flair standoff, like, this is my last match if I lose.
Yeah. And then I like, too, the Batista thing, and still at 35, because the like, build up, Batista was doing that thing where he was like, give me what I want, give me what I want. This would make it more, like, you could see why Triple H would maybe be, like, trepidatious about it. Like, he wants a last man standing in the Hell in a Cell. You could even do, like, maybe Stephanie trying to talk him out of it, and then just have Batista beat up Ric Flair, beat up Shawn Michaels, like, force him to do it. Beat up Vince McMahon. Beat the shit out of Vince McMahon.